Good morning. I'm Andy Marino, editor of Asian Trader. Let's be honest, most convenience retailers don't have time to sift through dozens of industry stories every day. You're running stores, managing staff, watching margins, trying to stay ahead of whatever challenge gets thrown at you next. So in the next few minutes, let's focus on 4 stories I think are genuinely worth your attention today. And if none of these stories affect your business this week, you're probably on holiday. Now let's start with Asda. Asda has launched a wholesale convenience trial in Scotland. Now, some people will immediately ask whether this is a threat to existing wholesalers. Maybe, but that's not what I'm asking. The question I find more interesting is this: why does Asda want to be here at all? Supermarkets don't accidentally wander into new markets. They go where they see opportunity. So when one of the UK's largest retailers starts exploring wholesale convenience, I think that's telling us something. It tells us that independent retail remains important, relevant and attractive. Now, before anyone gets carried away, let's remember that retail has a cemetery full of pilot schemes, trials and grand plans that didn't survive first contact with reality. This could end up being one of those. Retailers don't switch relationships overnight. Wholesalers aren't easy businesses to build, and established players won't sit back and watch market share disappear. But if I owned a convenience store, I'd still be paying attention, because competition for your business is usually a good thing. And my instinct is that over the next few years, we're going to see more large organizations trying to get closer to independent retailers, not just through supply, through technology, through data, and through marketing, through services. The convenience sector is becoming too important to ignore. Let's move on to labor costs. Asian Trader has reported on concerns around proposed reforms to 0 hours contracts and what they could mean for employers. Whenever these stories appear, the reaction tends to split into 2 camps. One side predicts disaster. The other side shrugs and says, everything's going to be okay. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, because costs are always rising. They were rising 5 years ago. They're rising now, and they'll probably be rising 5 years from today. The question isn't whether costs increase. The question is whether your business can adapt quickly enough. And that's where I think the real conversation should be. The retailers I know who perform best aren't constantly talking about costs. They're talking about productivity. How do we save time? How do we reduce waste? How do we serve customers more effectively? And how do we make life easier for the team? Those are the questions that matter. Now, some people think technology is the answer. Maybe, but I'd be careful. Retail has a long history of buying shiny new systems that promised the earth and delivered very little. We've all seen it. Technology isn't a strategy, it's a tool. And the retailers who succeed won't necessarily be the ones with the most technology. They'll be the ones who know exactly what problem they're trying to solve. Now, let's talk about retail crime. A new survey suggests most shoppers support the use of body-worn cameras to protect retail staff. Interestingly, when I read that story, I wasn't really thinking about cameras. I was thinking about attitudes. Because for years, retailers have been talking about theft, abuse, and antisocial behavior. And sometimes it felt like nobody was really listening. This research suggests that may be changing. Consumers appear increasingly aware of the challenges facing frontline retail workers. And that's important, because the more people understand the problem, the easier it becomes to build support for solutions. Now, are body-worn cameras the answer? No, let's not fool ourselves. A camera doesn't stop every incident. A camera doesn't replace good management, and a camera certainly doesn't replace effective enforcement. but it can form part of a bigger strategy. And I suspect we'll see more technology being used in this area over the next few years. Better reporting, better evidence, better intelligence, better data. But I'd also make the wider point. Stores that create the safest environments usually don't rely on one thing. They rely on lots of things well done, like good staff, good training, good procedures, good management. That's what makes the difference. Finally, let's talk about one of our biggest stories from yesterday, KA Remix. The product has become the top performing RTD launch of the past year, generating £2.2 million in sales and selling more than 750,000 cans since launch. Now, on the face of it, that's a drink story. I don't think it is. I think it's a consumer behaviour story. Because what's interesting isn't simply that people bought it. What's interesting is why they bought it. Consumers already knew the KA brand and they trusted it. They had a connection with it. The company didn't have to spend years building awareness. It already existed. What changed was the occasion, and there's a lesson in that. One of the biggest mistakes businesses make is assuming that innovation always means creating something new. Quite often, the smartest innovation is taking something people already understand and presenting it in a way that fits how they live now. Before anyone says this proves every brand extension is a winner, let's be sensible. Retail history is packed with products that looked unstoppable one year and disappeared the next. Success is never guaranteed, but I do think there's a wider trend here. Consumers increasingly want convenience, and they want familiarity, and they want products that feel relevant to their lifestyles. The brands that can deliver those things consistently are likely to keep winning. So what's my takeaway from all this? The convenience sector is changing. That's not particularly surprising. The pace of change is what interests me. We're talking about supermarkets entering wholesale, changing employment rules, new approaches to crime prevention, and entirely new categories emerging in drink. And that's a lot of change. Some retailers will see that as a headache. Others will see opportunity. After all, today's headlines are tomorrow's opportunities, if you spot them early enough. And in my experience, of a lot of it, I'm very old, the businesses that stay curious longest tend to perform best. That's my view. What's yours? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. If you found this useful, share it with another retailer, a supplier or industry colleague. And for more news, analysis and insight, visit asiantrader.biz. I'm Andy Marino. Thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got another few hundred retail headlines to get through before tomorrow morning.